You know, one of the things that proves that multiculturalism doesn't work, and that it is certainly not our greatest strength, is that the government has to engage in propaganda and cover-ups in order to promote it and in order to persuade people that it is a good thing. The most extreme cover-up in Britain, anyway, in relation to this, has been with regard to the grooming of vulnerable working class white girls. And a report has recently been published in the UK which has stated that to be concerned about this, or even to say that it is the case, is a conspiracy theory and is something far right. And what I want to look at in this video is the nature of this cover-up, and to note that what is being covered up is so grotesque that if the media really properly reported what happened, I think that it would start to collapse very quickly. But before I do that, could you possibly subscribe? It really, really helps me if you do that. Could you subscribe here on YouTube and hit the like button and leave a comment and share the video? And could you possibly also subscribe to my Substack? That's jollyheretic.com, where I put all of the most based content, where I put in-person interviews, vlogs, and where if you like what I do, you can support me for the cost of a pint of beer a month. Okay, back to the video. Now, there was a trial in 2019. There have been a number of trials. There was a trial in September 2024. In Rotherham, in which northern England, in which 7 men were collectively sentenced to 100 years in prison for child sex offences that occurred between 2003 and 2008. 25 counts of child sex offences. At about the same time this trial occurred, the Education Secretary in the UK, the Schools Minister, Bridget Phillipson, asserted that they need to diversify the English curriculum. I mean, even more than it's already diversified. Already, all that kids learn about in history is slavery. Already, if kids learn maths, it's always Amjit has 6 apples and Rahana has 12 apples. And even in maths, they try and smuggle it in. How much more diversified can they make it? You know that a system is not working if you need to brainwash children in order to uphold that system. But this is what multiculturalism evidently has led to in these northern towns. It has led to a group which comes into the community, which is ethnically different from the native community, which is genetically different, which has no historical bond with it, and wishes to, as it were, assert itself in a power battle with the native community. And how else do you do that other than by taking control of the young girls? That is what you do in a tribal setting. That is what men do. Large groups of men leave the tribe in which they are unable to get females. They go to another area, they remove the males, and they take control of the females. So doing this to the females is symbolically saying to the males, we have invaded, we are in charge now. It's what you would absolutely expect to happen. And of course, it has done. That was in 2024. In 2019, 5 men in Rotherham again were sentenced to 65 years in prison for sexually abusing underage girls. There are about 1,500 victims of Pakistani grooming and statutory rape and just rape gangs in Rotherham alone. Most of these victims are already vulnerable. They were at a low end of the society, already abused and neglected and so forth, that they were in foster care. Many of them 11, 12 years old, in foster care. They would be collected from the foster home or whatever, or from the children's home, in front of social workers. So this is obviously a dereliction of duty. A girl talked about losing her virginity aged 11 in a school playground and being tested for virginity first. The men that were running these gangs would charge other men money in order to have access to the girls that they had groomed with alcohol and drugs and so forth, and whom they therefore controlled. The cover-ups are incredible. There was a victim impact statement in which one of the victims stated that she wanted her perpetrator to be returned to Pakistan, which is where he came from. Under English law, if you are convicted in such a way, then you are returned anyway. But the judge censored her victim impact statement, so it couldn't be reported. And we haven't heard about the case in 2024, by the way, because it was only GB News, a relatively obscure news station, that dared to actually report it. 8% of people in the UK are of South Asian origin. They make up 28% of those involved in these grooming gang scandals. And the report, as I said, stated that to be concerned about this, it meant you were a conspiracy theorist and you were a right-wing extremist. Even when these cases are reported, the details, the appalling details, seem to be censored. For example, there was a case in 2003 of a girl called Charlie Downs, who was 14 years old. She was groomed. She was raped by multiple men. She was then murdered. Her body was dismembered, and then it was sold back to the community in Blackpool, where she came from, as kebab meat. And let us not forget about the details of some of the other cases. There was a case in 2013, for example, where a young girl, such that she could be subject to double vaginal, double anal, had a pump applied to her anus so it could be enlarged, such that two penises could be fitted into it concomitantly. These appalling, this was what the judge stated in 2013 in his trial summary. These appalling cases are either not reported at all, or they are limited to the local newspapers, or the details are left out. And now we've got to a point where it is so embarrassing for the regime that all they can do in response to more and more evidence of it, of the most vulnerable girls in society, girls that have had abusive backgrounds, girls that have been neglected, girls that nobody cares about, girls whose parents are alcoholics or drug addicts, such that they end up in the foster system, such that they end up in children's homes, the most vulnerable possible white girls. Nobody seems to really care about them. Of course they don't, because the people that run the country are middle class and upper class, and these girls are part of the underclass, and they look upon them with disgust, I suppose, and so they don't really feel that they want to help or get involved. But this is what has been going on, and now it is so bad that you have the schools minister stating that indoctrination with multiculturalism and how good it is needs to be ramped up in the schools in a context in which every television commercial promotes multiculturalism, in which every TV program promotes multiculturalism, in which history documentaries or history dramas have to have non-whites in them to rewrite history. In that, I mean, how much more extreme can it get? And in which those that draw attention to this are, of course, accused of being far right or being conspiracy theorists, because were this system to come collapsing down, then those who are in positions of power, who get their position of power by virtue signalling about the merits of multiculturalism and how they are more in favour of multiculturalism than anybody else, and those that were involved in this at the time, and who basically, for example, there was a police officer who was disciplined for telling a father not to go public about what had happened to his daughter because it would cause a riot in the town. Those people are now scared. Now the mood is shifting. Now we are realising the extent of the evil that has been committed against the British people by those who have been brought into the country by New Labour and by the last Conservative government. Those people are frightened that a shift is happening and they will be held to account. But they should be held to account. The social workers who turned a blind eye for fear of racism should be held to account. The police officers that did the same should be held to account. The journalists and filmmakers who have promoted inaccuracies in order to promote this, should be held to account. And it is, I hope, that as we come into 2025, it is the last straw that the British government should try to cover this up by stating that those who are concerned about a very real problem, about basically the ruining of girls' lives that are already marred by post-traumatic stress and God knows what, are conspiracy theorists and on the far right. Dominic Frisby that said in his song, "We're all far right now." Well, it seems that being concerned about the grooming and mass raping of vulnerable English girls means you are immoral according to the current system. It means you are extremist according to the current system. It means you are a bad person according to the current system. So what on earth does that say about the current system? I hope this has been of interest. I will see you soon, and goodbye. Are you ready for the future of the West?